Imagine it, folks. It's the mid-80s and you're in one of the biggest rock bands there is, creating music for a new generation of headbangers and music enthusiasts alike. But there is something quite sinister on the horizon, and no, it's not grunge music, it's something even more sinister than that. Yes, I am of course talking about angry parents and angry politicians. Hello! Welcome to Brain Spill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and when I show you this image, you probably think that this is just a group of grown men who are in drag going on a stag do. But no, this is the hair metal band Twisted Sister. Originally from New Jersey, the band would be regarded as one of the frontrunners of the now infamous 80s hair metal scene, with hits such as I Wanna Rock and We're Not Gonna Take It, to fuel the rebellious youth culture. It's particularly funny that this band, like many, are regarded as one of the hair metal bands or considered glam rock, because the frontman D. Snider himself has previously said that he doesn't consider Twisted Sister as glam, because that would infer that Twisted Sister was glamorous, and they were anything but glamorous. As a matter of fact, he commented and said that the total opposite was true, suggesting that instead they be referred to as hid, because they're hideous. Due to the kind of music they were making at the time, you know that aside from their, of course, dedicated fans, they also garnered attention from people who were not too keen on this whole get-up. Introducing Tipper Gore, wife of Al Gore and American social issues advocate. Like any bored housewife, she had to find something to preoccupy her time, and she decided to go after the one thing which she thought was corrupting America's youth. That's right, heavy metal music. Herself and other spouses of influential people in Washington DC formed a committee called the PMRC, otherwise known as the Parents Music Resource Center. The group was founded to try and implement a form of censorship and a warning of potential offensive material. With the themes and imagery in metal music not being your normal plastic radio friendly crap, this was the perfect target. Of course, as you can imagine, all music at this time was put under the microscope, but just so happened that heavy metal music was the one that was singled out, mainly because of what it is basically. The PMRC created a playlist of 15 songs, which they considered the most obscene songs ever written. This was done to try and highlight the fact that there was so much music out there that was deemed offensive and also harmful to children. They probably saw it as an opportunity to highlight all of this bad music. However, many other people would probably look at these 15 songs on this playlist and think that the PMRC have just put together one of the greatest playlists of all time. Some of the bands and artists on the playlist were Judas Priest for their song Eat Me Alive, Motley Crue's song named Bastard, Def Leppard's High and Dry, and of course Twisted Sister and their song We're Not Gonna Take It. The reasoning as to why these songs, amongst others, were found to be offensive fell under a variety of reasons, from having sexually explicit themes and imagery, violence, profanity, and so on. Therefore, a rating system was proposed. The rock community challenged this, as they saw this as a form of censorship and segregation. So, the battle was on. This leads us to 1985, where the PMRC had managed to get this pushed into a congressional hearing. At this stage, meetings had to be held with various music labels, where plans were already being drawn up to have the now infamous parental advisory stickers put on record labels. However, at this time the Senate committee also had some debates on the matter to have an open and frank discussion on the harm that some of this music might be doing to America's culture and youth. So to do this, they invited a number of musicians to come in to argue their corner, and what they needed was some bumbling, washed up rocker who has no idea what he's talking about to come in there and make a mockery of himself. So they decided to invite D. Snider of Twisted Sister. The date is the 19th of September 1985. The United States Senate was packed out, politicians all lining up to give testimony. But then, in walks D. Snider, a stark contrast from the other politicians in the room, as Snider decided to wear your typical underdressed and undereducated rocker look. Well, in the eyes of the PMRC anyway, that's what they were hoping for. They thought that they'd got the scapegoat and brought him into the lion's den to get absolutely torn asunder. However, I don't think that the committee had really done enough research on the guy, because What they were about to witness, nobody expected. I didn't have any other clothes. There was no suit in my closet, jeans, cut-off t-shirts, cut-off denim, hair. It was, this is who I am. I was very proud of being a dirtbag in high places. So, Dee Snider sat down and he pulled out of his pocket a crudely written up script, and it was only once he started to open his mouth and talk, the committee realised that they'd made a massive mistake, because the person they'd brought in was actually a very well educated and very well articulated man who knew exactly what he was talking about. They really wanted Vince Neil. Vince is not very articulate. He is actually a lifestyler, so he probably would have been half in the bag going in there. They would have smacked him around because he's incapable of fighting at that level. As far as going and having an intellectual debate on something, he'd be pretty defenceless. That's fighting words right there, and I don't blame him because, this is Vince Neil now, so let's just see who came out better on top at the end of it all. But what Dee Snider was alluding to in that quote was the fact that someone like Vince Neil was actually living the rock and roll lifestyle, someone that probably did booze and drugs every single day of his life. However, Dee Snider surprised Congress when he revealed that he was completely clean. No drugs, no booze, he was completely teetotal, the complete opposite of the kind of person that they wanted in there to debate this topic. So, any attempt by Congress to smear this man was going to be an uphill battle. It wasn't just Dee Snider that they had to contend with, however, as other musicians, Frank Zappa and John Denver, also testified on the matter. They were also well versed in the topic, but they dressed in suits, so in the grand scheme of things, they were not quite as surprising as when Dee Snider rocked up. The Senate must have thought that they were all well prepared, but not quite as prepared as Dee Snider. Ms. Gore claimed that one of my songs, Under the Blade, had lyrics encouraging sadomasochism, bondage and rape. The lyrics she quoted have absolutely nothing to do with these topics. On the contrary, the words in question are about surgery and the fear that it instills in people. I can say categorically that the only sadomasochism, bondage and rape in this song is in the mind of Ms. Gore. And just in case you don't know the lyrics of the song for what he's referring to here, this is what they were talking about. This, understandably, took Senator Al Gore back a bit, especially that this hairy man had just taken a jab at his own wife. And as well as that, technically he's right. If you were to read some lyrics for a song, one person might interpret it completely differently to the next person along. So it's all down to a matter of interpretation. This must have stung just that little bit more. The lyrics in these songs are not the only problem that the committee had, however. As you may recall, that Twisted Sister had a song that was put on the Filthy 15 playlist. Their song, We're Not Gonna Take It. Which, to be fair, if you're putting that in the playlist as one of the most obscene songs ever written, then they've got a pretty narrow scope because the lyrics of the song is pretty much, we're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore. Yeah, basically, there's nothing really that obscene about it. But their problem wasn't with the lyrics itself. Their problem was with the music video for that song. The music video showing violence being shown towards a father figure who disapproves of his son listening to Twisted Sister, being pushed around and thrown out of a window, which was all part of the same music video. There were other questions posed to Snider to try and ruin his character, but he stepped up and shot down pretty much every single one. One question he was asked was, if your child was to listen to music, what would you do to ensure that that was safe and good for them? And, well, of course, Dee Snider had a good response for that as well. Basically, he said, as any good parent should, they should do their due diligence first and basically check the album art of the cover, the names of the songs, and if things aren't entirely clear at that point, just listen to it yourself, and then, you can kind of get a good feeling as to whether the music is appropriate for a child of such a young age. Come on, it kind of speaks for itself, guys. Other accusations were also raised against Dee Snider, such as him being a Christian man and the decision to name the fan club of the band the Sick Motherfucking Friends of Twisted Sister, otherwise known as the SMF Friends of Twisted Sister. Snider quickly shut this down by very clearly stating that profanity is not associated with Christianity, or vice versa. At this point, the questioning from the senators really started to fall apart, and you could tell that they were maybe clutching at straws here, because they produced a t-shirt which showed an image of the Twisted Sister logo with a woman spreading her legs on them, and questioned the fact why the band would sell such a shirt. Well, Dee Snider snapped back. This was either poor research by the senators or a straight up lie, because Snider outrightly rejected the notion that any merchandise had ever been sold like that, and that they take these themes very seriously to ensure it is inclusive to avoid sexism in their music and in their personal lives. By the end, Dee Snider had put up a very stiff resistance and was able to ward off many of the questions posed to him in a very, very well articulated way. And yes, it's safe to say that I think at the end of this, Dee Snider came out on top. However, the unfortunate truth to this is that despite all of this, the PMRC had already had the talks with the record companies to have this infamous parental advisory label be put on the albums, and it almost seemed like it was going to happen in any event. This all seems pretty bad, but after this started happening, it was found that albums that did have the sticker, the parental advisory sticker, led generally to higher charting positions for albums, being treated as a badge of honour in some cases, being the fact that your album is so explicit that this is something that people have to check out. However, Dee Snider himself doesn't agree with this outlook on the parental advisory stickers being placed on albums, and even to this very day says the following. It wasn't about helping parents to choose for their kids. It was used to sequester certain records. Certain chains wouldn't carry certain albums. The major chains were demanding record companies make alternate, censored printing of albums. That is another level of censorship. If a grown man or woman walks in and they want to buy this new album, they aren't necessarily getting the artist's version. They're getting the version that corporations want you to hear. The fans did not recognise what was happening. They're like, oh, it's just a sticker. It lets us know what the real cool records are. That was the morons' take on it. It was frustrating that people, the fans, were so apathetic and not smart enough to understand the significance of what was happening. Now, when it comes down to physical album sales, this I can understand. If you go into a record shop and you're picking up an album and it's not the original version or vision that an artist had and it's been amended by some corporate bigwigs in an office somewhere, that's not what anyone wants to hear. However, as the songs are now moving into the digital age, where a lot more stuff's being streamed, you'd hope that there might be a bit more freedom on something like that being the case. But who knows, maybe there's a stranglehold even stronger than there was before, and people, like Dee Snider said, just haven't realised it. Even if this isn't a problem anymore when it comes to buying or streaming a song or album, this is still a big problem for artists if they try and get their song played on the radio or to get some airtime, because as you can imagine, if you have a song with a lot of profanity or violent themes in it, may get censored, which again might go completely against the vision of the artists themselves. Or they might have to release a radio cut, which is basically a trimmed down version of the true song that they were meant to release. Of course, the problem hasn't completely gone away, and I don't know if it is something that even will. However, all I know is that we need more people like Dee Snider on the front lines who are saying it how it is. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. Just so you know, this entire script was made by me listening to Twisted Sister on repeat, and you know for a fact I'm going to do the same thing when I edit this video later. So it's going to be a pretty jamming session, not going to lie. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.